here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's December 4th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin and I'll be filling in for Shin Yeon this week. And you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Choi Ji-hee.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. Now, as usual, let's start with the news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. We start here in Germany. According to Bavarian public broadcaster Bayerischer Rundfunk, Munich on Saturday witnessed its heaviest daily snowfall in December since data was first compiled in 1933. About 760 flights at Munich airport were canceled on Saturday, leaving hundreds of passengers stranded. Now, most of the planned flights for Sunday were called off too. Buses, trams, and long-distance train services were also suspended, with numerous transport accidents reported on icy roads. Germany's national railway company says rail traffic would be impacted severely by the weather until Monday. Now, back here in Korea, the country continues to grapple with a dwindling population. The number of first graders entering elementary school next year is expected to dip below 400,000 for the first time. Now, while the Interior Ministry has yet to officially announce the figures, data from 2017, the birth year of the upcoming first graders, shows there were 357,000 births. Now, what's worse, first grader numbers are expected to hover around 300,000 by 2027. This is raising alarms as the rapid decline in child population poses a potential threat to economic growth stemming from labor and consumer shortages. Staying in Korea, Seoul City announced on Sunday that it will address the recent rip-off controversy at Gwangjang Market, one of the city's premier destinations for eating and shopping. It has proposed indicating the quantity of each menu item next to its price and showcasing mock-ups of each menu in front of respective shops to provide customers with a clear expectation of what they'll get. The controversy unfolded after a video featuring a YouTuber taking his friends from Vietnam to Gwangjang Market went viral. They spent 15,000 Korean won, which is around $11.5 on chon, which are Korean-style pancakes, only to receive 10 small pieces. Now, the reason why we brought up this topic today is because Gwangjang Market has become a favorite destination for millennials and Gen Zs. So I want to ask you, have you guys ever visited Gwangjang Market? And if so, what are your thoughts on the recent rip-off controversy and the proposals given by the Seoul City government?
Yeah, so I've been there plenty of times. I love the place, and it's always one of those tourist destinations that I like to take my friends to when they come to South Korea. Now, I do think this is a fair move by the government to implement rules for this. Taking advantage of tourists, it happens globally, it just doesn't happen here. But it does give the country a bad name. Usually when you come back from a trip, sometimes you point out the things like, oh, I was ripped off at the market or something like that. We don't want that here in Korea. Now, I will sympathize with the shopkeepers, as I can't imagine that they earn a lot. It's a market. These days, people don't go to markets as much as they used to, so they might not be making as much money. But I think fair is fair, and they should be, giving the right prices for what they sell. I'm sure the shopkeepers themselves actually would not want to be ripped off. So yes, fair's fair.
I mean, nobody will want to get ripped off. And I think you made a really valid point, because if instances like this happen again, then that could harm our nation's brand and national image. Now, what about you, Ji? Have you ever been to Gwangjang Market?
Oh yes, I've been to Gwangjang Market, and I remember having raw meat or
so
yukhae. I can see it on your face. And mung bean pancakes or 빈대떡. And I occasionally like to go to these traditional markets to taste these different local foods in small portions. And I really like looking around for these different foods as well as the different products they sell there. And one of the main reasons for my visit is to really enjoy the cheap and affordable foods, like I said, in small portions. But if I had to pay unreasonable amounts of money for, let's say, a plate of tteokbokki, then the whole purpose of going there would disappear. So I really do support the recent measure taken by the government, because I I do think that some of the prices that these markets provided the consumers were quite pricey for the little portions of food they provided.
Right, I definitely agree. You just mentioned how the reason why a lot of people love to go to Gwangjang Market is because you can taste a wide variety of delicious food at a very affordable price. So we'll have to see whether Seoul City government's proposed measures will be effective so that this incident never happens again. All right, that was our news feed for this Monday. So we're now going to move on to our main discussion topic of the day. Yesterday, December 3rd, was Consumers' Day here in South Korea. Now, it's a day designated by the country's Fair Trade Commission to emphasize the importance of consumer rights. So here's my AI voice secretary with more. In recent years, millennials and Gen Zers have been turning heads with their shopping habits. When they buy something, they are not just looking at the product's quality or its price. It's all about the company's values and beliefs. If the company doesn't align with what they believe in, no matter how good or affordable the product is, they hit the brakes on buying it. This is called meaning out consumption in Korea, a combination of the words mean and coming out, referring to beliefs and the act of revealing one's true beliefs or values through consumption. So today we're going to look into this meaning out consumption habit of millennials and Gen Zs, and as shown in the VCR, values and beliefs play a huge role in their decision-making process. So let's begin with a broad question. As part of this generation, millennials and Gen Zs, what are some common traits in your opinion does our generation share when going shopping or buying a product?
Well, the spending patterns of millennials and Gen Z are quite unique because while they tend to be extremely frugal by taking up, let's say, the zero spend challenge, which we talked about earlier, which is literally spending zero money, they are also willing to splurge on expensive luxury goods if they really want them. And their spending habits are quite the opposite of their saving habits at times as well, because they prefer to invest their money instead of spending it. So overall, it seems as though they spend when they want to and save when they need to.
Yeah, I think that based on your answer, it really shows that our generation is really a value-driven consumer because, as you mentioned, spending when we want to and saving when we need to really reflects that our decision is based on what we believe is right. Now, Walter, are there any other traits among our generation that you found interesting?
Well, like you mentioned, minimizing the spending is sadly a must for some, especially given the economic environment.
Right.
And this has caused many people to go for various discounted products. As we've heard recently in the news, like the ugly fruit, they're selling that at a lower price. So people are going to buy those sort of things. Also, maybe secondhand. I know that certain applications do secondhand products as well. So we're going to, use those things these days. This has also led to companies to rethink on how to brand their products as well. Here, there was not too long ago a trend where a bank would they will give you a map and places to go, and if you go to those places, they would give you, let's say, like 100 Korean won, which is around like 80 cents or something. And the more places you go, the more money you could, accumulate and actually have. However, it would take a long time to get enough money to spend it. But yes, these days our trends are changing, and it's interesting to see.
I can definitely agree with what you're saying because I'm one of those people who is like hunting for to get one more coupon to find out what gives me the most discounts or sales. So obviously I'm part of millennials and Gen Z. So you two guys mentioned very interesting traits, consuming traits of millennials and Gen Zs. But to move on to our main keyword of the day, which is a meaning out approach based on your personal experiences and your observations, how do you think this concept plays out in our generation's consuming habits?
Well, like you mentioned, consumption has become a way for millennials and Gen Z to really express their values.
Right.
And they're called value-driven consumers, to be specific, which means they prefer products that align with their beliefs and values. So if we take a look on the screen, according to recent studies, 8 out of 10 millennials and Gen Z identify themselves as value-driven consumers. So for these consumers, social impact and psychological satisfaction satisfaction are just as important as price when it comes to buying products. Now, there are various terms that describe certain types of consumers as well. In Korean, we call them 가심비, for example, is a term used to describe the balance between price and psychological satisfaction in buying things, while meaning out, like you mentioned, refers to expressing one's beliefs through consumptions. And we also have consumers who buy products from ethical as well as socially responsible companies, and we call them the good consumers. And those who care about a company's social and ethical behavior and whose ideology and values align with environmental values. We call them the green consumers. Yeah.
So just by looking at the stats, 8 out of 10 millennials and Gen Zs and all these keywords, good consumers, 가심비, green consumers, really show how our generation is really a value-driven consumer group. So I want to ask you, are there any more specific examples that you would like to give, Walter?
Yeah, so these green consumers these days, they're purchasing products that would, have connections with environmental campaigns and donations. An example would be certain plastic bottle companies as well, with not having a label on them, instead just being a straight bottle. Also clothing, as we just see here, or products or used materials as well, recycled materials to make something new is a new trend amongst our generation. I know that certain sports brands as well have been making shoes out of recycled materials, and as you can see, handbags as well. So it's quite interesting that we are moving towards this area, this new sort of fashion of second-hand stuff, which I didn't think was a very Korean thing until recently. But this type of consumption has all been spread through social media, and much like the episode we did on spending as little as possible, as Jihee mentioned early, people are taking to the post to show off that they have this brand new but second-hand sort of item, and it's a great niche area, and I think that hopefully it just keeps going and going.
Right, so uploading these posts and kind of leading this campaign and movement really kind of shows that our generation is really not shy from taking a stand. And there have been instances where certain products, particularly that's popular among our generation, facing boycotts. So have you guys ever witnessed these instances, or have you even taken part in such movements?
So like you said, it's very evident these days for the younger generation to really value ethics and the socially responsible behaviors of companies. So they're really not afraid to boycott companies that go against their values. So according to a survey as well, about 80% of people in their 30s and 40s have stopped buying certain products due to ethical concerns. And social media is often the powerful tool for these young people to lead the boycotts, and they often use hashtags, of course, especially for products that mostly young people purchase as well. For example, there was this one Korean dairy product which forced sales of products to its agents, and it caused a huge controversy. And also this Japanese brand was also faced with a boycott, and this other distribution company was also faced with a boycott because of some of its labor and safety issues. And this other hair dryer brand, a famous one, the D brand, received complaints about the lack of an after-sales service center in the country. So these are some of the examples of brands that faced boycott. And I've also boycotted one of these products before. Yes, and it came out of my value as well. Yeah, so it's a common activity or a common practice for the younger generation to really consume based on their values like this.
Right, so these movements and these campaigns, they all started with a good cause to kind of make a much needed change in our society. But we've seen cases where customers from our generation have been a bit more on the disrespectful side, consuming or making these movements or campaigns not really based on clear ethical or value-based reasons, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So with everything, there's always those kind of people who want to take things to the extreme and make things worse for the companies. And a big topic, and we did talk about this last week on our show, is fake news about certain products or companies for that matter. And it can be spread in order to damage the reputation of certain products. Now, this has also been a big topic on social media, and as we know, when things go viral, they can spread everywhere, and a lot of that, we talked about this on last week's show, sometimes people don't do their research, and this can affect companies from all, from the big companies, even down to the small companies, which is really quite bad. So this is not only wrong, this is something that needs to be stopped eventually.
Right, because there are always people who are trying to manipulate, even though a movement has started from a good cause. So as you mentioned, always fact-checking is the most important one. So we now talked about the situations and instances in Korea, but what about in other parts of the world? So we asked our viewers, what are some things they absolutely check every time they buy an item except the price? So here's what 3 of them had to say. Now, Tasmia says, I always check the ingredients of the products as I have certain health issues. I also check the price to see if it's within my budget. Doina says, well, it depends, but always the quality of the item and the producer. There are a lot of fake products on the market. Finally, Scott says, if it's food products, then the ingredients to know if it's halal allowed or not halal, and in general, the quality of every product. So just by looking at the comments of our viewers, we can really see that our generation is consuming based on their values and beliefs. So to delve deeper onto the meaning out phenomenon and the reasons behind it, we're now going to connect live to an expert in marketing. We'll be right back, so stay tuned. So joining us today is Dr. Jared Watson, Assistant Professor of Marketing at New York University Stern School of Business. Welcome, Dr. Watson, to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, Dr. Watson, is this meaning out approach also a common trait among millennials and Gen Zs overseas? And if it is, what do you think is the reason behind this trend?
Absolutely. Yeah, the meaning out phenomenon is a global phenomenon, so we see that around the world. One of the big reasons is that the younger generations simply have more information. We know more than prior generations. And as a result of that, it's hard for us to not act on the information that's given when it comes to fair trade and ethical labor laws.
I see. Well, what do you think then sets millennials and Gen Z consumers apart from other generations?
Sure. I think there's 2 big things. I already noted the information change that we've seen with the generations. The other is really what our goals are in life today. So for many of us, if we look at our parents or our grandparents' generation, they could work at one company their entire career and retire at a young age. And for many of us around the world, that feels less and less likely. And as a result of that, our spending patterns are shifting towards things that make us feel good in the present moment. Rather than saving for this house, we're looking for great vacations. We're looking for high quality clothing, things that can make us feel good moment to moment.
Yeah, that's quite interesting that you mentioned that, because I do feel that even as myself, who's been in plenty of jobs, I still don't know if being here will be something I want to do for the rest of my life. And my spending habits have changed due to, each job that I go in. But from your perspective, what's the fine line that separates being discerning and being disrespectful? And how can millennials and Gen Zers navigate this balance effectively?
Sure. So I think the way we separate discernment from disrespect is understanding the message that we're communicating to other people, right? And the motivation behind that message that we're communicating. So if we approach any situation that we're trying to communicate wellness, we're trying to communicate change, right? That allows us to be more discerning. If we're trying to communicate superiority, if we're trying to communicate malice or anger, right? We drift towards disrespect. And so it's hard for us to actually get other generations to shift towards sustainable consumption or ethical consumption when we have that disrespectful tone. And so we need to just understand that, if the goal is to make more people be discerning when they consume, then we have to approach that with that level of respect.
All right, Dr. Watson, thank you so much for your valuable insights. We appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think concepts like meaning out arise from our desire to be savvy, really wise consumers. So before we end up, I would like to ask you guys, are there any advice or hacks that you would like to share to each other or to our viewers so that we can become really wise consumers?
Well, I don't have any fancy sort of advice to give you, but it's something that I do personally. So I make sure not to go grocery shopping when I'm feeling hungry or engage in online shopping when I'm stressed because I know for sure that my emotions and these physical states can alter my rational judgment when it comes to spending. And also, I try to follow the save first approach so that I can prioritize saving over spending. So for example, if I had to earn 100 million Korean won, then I would save 50% of it first and then use the remaining amount. So this would help me to save up a lot more in the long run.
Right, so saving first and not going shopping when you're hungry or when you're stressed. And I actually experienced that because whenever I go shopping during those circumstances, I just put everything into my bag, even though I can afford it. Yeah, so we should really be careful of that. That was a really good hack. And what about you, Walter?
I agree with Ji because I tend to obviously have a very short shopping list but a very large grocery ending. So that usually happens to me. But the way I try, and I will emphasize the word try, is to compare it to a diet. Now, I don't like both of them. I don't like saving money and I don't like dieting. But in order to have, I guess, a well-established life, you need to be very, not frugal, but at least safe with both areas. So, for example, you might have a meal plan when you're dieting. So you set out your meals for the whole week. You could probably do that with your money as well, if you can sort of predict on what your schedule is going to be like. If you work a usual 9-to-5 job, maybe you go, hey, on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'll just eat in the office, where on Tuesday and Thursday, I might go out with friends. This is enabling you to manage your costs a little bit more. But it's always good to know that, we like to have cheat meals from day to day. And though I usually go all out on my cheat days, when they say cheat meals, they mean one meal, but I say cheat days, which is the whole day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the snacks between. But it's the same with money, I would say, as well. You shouldn't be so tight with your money, so frugal with your money. From time to time, it is okay for you to spend a little bit within reason as long as you plan out all your expenses first. Now, for me, budgeting is a bit of a tedious task, but given today's economic status, we have no other choice but to actually manage our finances as best as we can in order to survive in the future.
All right, it's very good advice and hacks from you two guys. I'll definitely keep that in mind when I go shopping next time. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, but we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Choi Ji-hee.
Thank you.
And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.